right, good morning and welcome everyone to our monthly webinar. So glad to have everyone on with us today. In this month's session, we're taking a closer look at backup solutions, as well as how our backup solutions, or lack thereof, make a significant impact in every single company's business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Here's who we have on the call here on our end at Integrity IT. Presenting today, my name is David Remfer. I'm one of our account managers here. Glad to have you on the call. Marcus Simpson, our other account manager, who many of you get the privilege of working with, is on, as well as Joanne Young from our sales and marketing team, Brian Pryor, our VP of sales and marketing, and Nick Connis, who is our lead engineer for backup and disaster recovery solutions. So we're glad to have you all on the call today with us. Hopefully you're enjoying some free lunch there at your office with your teams. If for whatever reason that's not come through yet, feel free to post in the chat. And if you have any questions along the way, post those in the chat for us as well, and our sales and marketing team will be glad to interact with you over the course of the webinar. So here's a quick overview of the areas we'll be hitting during today's webinar. First, we'll be looking at the 5 common data disasters. We tend to think of this as a very large-scale thing, but a lot of data disasters are everyday things. And we'll have a fun pop quiz there to give everyone a chance to interact with the presentation and see where we stand on our current understanding of backup solutions. Then we'll look at the risks that you don't have covered. Most businesses that we interact with typically only have certain areas of backups covered, and others we may not be as aware of. So we're going to highlight some of those, as well as field a discussion of, is there such a thing as a best backup solution? There are many out there, and we'll look at some of the popular ones that we see and what the risk gaps within those are, as well as our own backup solution that Integrity IT offers called IntegraVault. We'll highlight that one, how it keeps you safe, and how it meets all of the key areas of risk that we identify as a managed services IT provider for our customers. In highlighting that solution, obviously, we don't want to just talk about backups and concepts. We want to show you a little bit of our proven success record and getting to see some of the results we've had in taking care of our clients and keeping their businesses and their data safe. At the end of that, we'll have a Q&A session where you can feel free to ask questions of your account managers and of our lead project engineer, Nick Connis, who's on the call with us, and then have a webinar giveaway drawing at the end. So feel free to stay on the call all the way through and be interacting with us throughout so that you'll be entered to that drawing to win some free stuff. So as I mentioned, let's open this up with a fun pop quiz. Looking for some crowd participation here. There are hidden within this list what we call the 5 common data disasters, things that actually happen every day that are much more prevalent need for backups than you might think. And among those, there are 3 which are by far and away the top causes that comprise the majority of issues we see. So I'd love for everyone to take a quick moment, type in chat, just introduce, say hello from your team, let us know that you're on, and take a vote for what you think the top 3 are. If you're there with a crew, feel free to dialogue internally, kind of brainstorm. We'll give everyone a minute there. All right, some good answers. Okay, we'll give everyone just a moment here. Good stuff. Building fire from our VP of Sales and Operations. Nice. All right. Drum roll, please. Top 3 are these: accidental file deletion, policy violation internally at a company, and viruses or hacks, the ones that a lot of people are common to guess. Many data disasters that we see have more than one cause involved, but these 3 causes, by far and away, are in an astounding majority of the cases that we see. When we interact with our customers talking about backup solutions, we tend to hear a very doom and gloom, kind of fear-mongering, the world is ending picture of backups. And seldom is that actually the case. It is an important component of a backup solution, but these 5 common data disasters in these top 3 are very much an everyday reality within corporate environments. And so when we have a well-educated understanding of these real root causes, that helps us skillfully engineer a proper backup solution in response. Now, rounding out the top 5, we have hardware failure and software failure. Those are both very common as well. They're not things we need to be afraid of, but they are things that we should be appropriately aware of and appropriately planning for in our solution. StorageCraft, who's a backup provider out there, one that we don't currently source, but They did a survey of about 400 of their backup clients, and 99% of the partners who responded have experienced a hardware failure. 81% of those, they said one of the failure types they've experienced, or the failure type they've experienced, is hard drive failure, which understandably would jeopardize the safety of your data. Also, CERN, those are the guys halfway around the world who have the massive particle physics lab and they're smashing atoms together, super smart guys. They did an examination of their system when they found out that some of the calculations weren't quite lining up the way they should be. And what they found is that there was a lot of software corruption of their data in their files. And they estimated as a result of their findings that approximately 1 in 1,500 files on their system, and on many people's systems because of the commonality of the root cause, is affected by software corruption. So these are things that happen every day as well. Now, as we mentioned, viruses and hacks are out there. There's a much more public awareness in our modern day and age of security and these types of threats, given all of the major things we've seen in the news recently with breaches and vendors getting through and all of that. The National Small Business Association, so the guys who interact not so much with the big solutions we'll see in the news, but the everyday guys, like a lot of who we have on the call today, they ran an end-of-year report at the end of 2014 and estimated that half, 50%, of all the small businesses they're interacting with reported that they had been the victim of a major cyber attack. And those costs are substantial. They estimated that in the last couple of years, the cost had tripled on average to an average of about $21,000 per attack. And that was in 2014, end of year. Obviously, we're a little bit past that, but alarming growth curve in the cost of dealing with those. And there is what a lot of us think of with backups and disaster recovery as a true natural disaster. Fires, floods, somebody setting off sprinklers in the office, earthquake, tornado, things of that sort. These are nowhere near as common, but they do happen. And all of us here in Lexington saw bluegrass stockyards go up in flames on January 30th. So we're very much freshly aware of the fact that this can happen to anyone. This happened to a business in our city just down the road from us. So without a proper backup and disaster recovery solution, this can be lethal to a business. Losing a significant component of your data without the ability to recover from that often leads to closing your doors. So these are things to keep in mind. And as mentioned, there are a couple types of risk, and often the businesses we interact with don't have all of them covered. So let's expand on our commonly shared definition of backups. From our perspective as an IT provider, backups are for the everyday issues. Those are things that cost you data, that cost you rework, files being accidentally deleted, corruption, things of that sort. But the other two components of the discussion, which a good backup solution should take into account, are business continuity and disaster recovery. So when we look at business continuity, great, you can restore the data from your backups. That's excellent. Good job on the first tier. How long does it take you to restore that data? And how long does it take you to restore your team's ability to do work the way you were prior to the incident? So business continuity can actually cost you productivity as a team. Understandably, disaster recovery and a lack of a plan thereof, those can cost you your business entirely. So we want to make sure we're looking at all of these. A couple of stories of backups, just to look at the first of those three. These are true stories from some of our client base, which have happened within the last 2 years. And these are clients who either did not have our backup solution and came into our managed services program and now have backups with us to prevent these things from happening again, or they're clients who were in with a component of our services but not backups as of yet, and since this time we've added backups to their services. You can see a couple of these here. Client A, we had a not-for-profit company with 20 years of business data on a little external USB drive he carried around everywhere with him. The drive went bad. He had no copy of it anywhere, and he lost all of it, his contacts, his files, everything. Client B was a company who had one of their departments storing all of their data on a slightly better appliance, network accessible storage device that they had, and they had about 8 years of department data there. Well, there were 2 drives in it directly mirroring one another, and the drives failed. So they sent those off for the big fancy forensic recovery, those guys who I guess retired from the CIA and started their own kind of gig. They have a little clean room, and they had to pay $1,000 per drive to attempt to recover the data, and they still experienced 80% data loss. They were not able to get everything back. Client C, a little step above these, they had a file folder backup, which is great, and they backed it up off-site, so significantly improved in terms of the latter. But they had an employee who, as many of us have seen all over the news, opened up one of those crypto locker email. Now those not only infect your computer, but they infect all of the network drives mapped to that computer. So the whole company's network drive for every user was encrypted and everyone was locked out. So Integrity, we had to deploy someone on site, and we restored all their files to the previous day's version from the off-site copy, which is great. But that was about 2 hours of downtime where no one in the company could work. And the full day of business data that they had done before that time was all lost. So everyone had to recreate or re-enter that data staff-wide. He was not a popular man at the water cooler that day. And then our last client was someone with tape backups, something we're particularly wary of, and we'll get more to the why behind that in a few slides here. But the tapes were never monitored, never tested, and in fact they had not been completing successfully for quite some time. Their core server failed out, and we emergency overnighted shipments of lots of pieces of hardware, servers, licensing, all that, stood up a whole brand new server for them, had to rebuild their domain so all their users could log in, rebuild email, all of that. They were extremely lucky that they were able to recover the data from the old hard drives via a rather obscure method, but the business continuity side of it was that they faced about 7 days of business downtime because their one and only server was down, and their backup and disaster recovery solution had nothing built in for continuity. So speaking of continuity, giving you a chance that you can think about this for your business or discuss with your team if you're there with a group of you, take a look at how long would you be down on a normal outage and how much does downtime actually cost. There's a little calculator here. You can snap a picture of this and recreate it on your end. We put in some sample numbers for a mid-sized business that we might interact with. Say there's 20 employees, a very brief outage of 2 hours, which is on the recovery end of backups, a fairly solid recovery speed. And we estimated that from that, the total cost of their downtime for just 2 hours is about $2,400. Now, understandably, if you're in a larger business, more employees, or your revenue is more substantial, or the affected employees comprise a higher percentage of your revenue generation, then downtime increases in cost from there. So this gives you a chance to extrapolate for your own business, but suffice to say, if your backup solution doesn't account for this, the cost is steep. So you want to make sure that you don't just have something which gives you backups, but which also gives you continuity and which gives you disaster recovery. So with those 3 pieces in mind, kind of that expanded definition of backups, business continuity, disaster recovery, these 3 prongs, we want to look at a couple of the popular solutions that are out there. These are ones which Integrity IT has either tested ourselves before, or we've had clients in our managed services client base who have tried these at various times. So these are things we've interacted with, and we've seen pros and cons of these. So to highlight a couple of them here for you. Carbonite's a popular one that's out there right now. It's a little off-site backup. It's small software. It's pretty automated. But anything above 200 gigabytes of data, they begin throttling down your connection, and the speed that you can upload crawls. So if you're a business that has anything more than that, which nowadays many users have that much data just on their own machine, much less on the server, this isn't a particularly functional solution for you. And the location of the data and support is unknown. If you had a true emergency where you needed to go and get it, internally they'd have to figure that out. So that's not optimal. We have some clients who have cloud file sharing. It's a fantastic solution. We resell one ourselves called Anchor, which we'd love to tell you about if you're of interest in that. But many of our clients have the perception that a cloud file sharing solution is in fact a backup, and it's really not. It does give you a synchronization between what's locally on your machine and what's out in the cloud. So if you ever needed to get to it from another device, a browser, whatever, you have that. But there's no versioning history built in. It's a direct synchronization. So what happens if the file is accidentally deleted? Or if the file is corrupted, the file gets infected by a virus? Well, you now have a synchronized, corrupted file on multiple sources. And while you may have access to it elsewhere, the copy that everyone has access to is bad. Also, this solution on standard solution types does not have industry compliance. So for anyone concerned with PCI compliance, with HIPAA violations, with other forms of security specific to your industry, that's something to look very closely at. And so we usually recommend this as a component of your IT design, but not as a backup solution per se. Some clients have file folder backups. These are great. We actually resell these ourselves to a couple people. The key with file folder backups is this is intended to be a very small subset of backup. It's never intended to be a true business continuity or disaster recovery design. It only enables you to send a small subset of your files off-site. With that in mind, do you regularly audit your file folder backups to make sure that you still have the right folders backed up? If not, there may be things that since the last time you designed the backups have entered your environment and become critical data which are not actually protected. Also, whenever applications, lots of line of business applications do their updates, they'll change the target folders that are utilized by the application or change some of the pieces built into Windows Registry. And if you're not updating your backups for that, then again, some of your business data is not necessarily protected. So this is something which requires a lot of manual interaction on a regular, disciplined basis in order for this to be viable just for the safety of your data at all. And then beyond that, again, for the business continuity or disaster recovery side, even if you have the files and folders, your time to recovery could be 7 to 10 days, similar to Client D, who we looked at a few slides ago. We'd have to bring in new hardware, stage that, deploy it to your environment, all of those steps before you would ever truly be back up and running. So you're still looking at a substantial business downtime. Another popular one that's out there right now is Movi Pro. We see this as something that's similar to Carbonite, except that it has extensive history with poor support and bad customer feedback online in general. The restore costs also tend to be steep. If you have any significant volume of data, they're not willing to let you download it. It's something you have to place it on a disk. They'll ship that to you. And we saw a client who had 3 drives needed for their data, and Movi Pro is going to charge them over $1,000 for that. If you don't go that way, it's a slower store speed on a large volume. You could be looking at 6 to 10 days because they throttle your download speed in terms of getting files back, and that's not really acceptable from our perspective. If you have an on-site only disaster, kind of similar to the small picture of a flooded office here on the right, you really don't have a disaster recovery scenario. So if something happens locally, your data is out. You're risking legal liability, business loss, things of that nature. And from the common data disasters we talked about, since you have nothing off-site, anything that you have is on your domain, and it's vulnerable to network corruption, similar to Client C, who we saw, who had the CryptoLocker virus infect things. On the flip side, if you don't keep anything locally and it's all off-site only, well, yes, there is some measure of disconnection and safety from your domain. There's a very slow recovery time that you could be facing because getting that much data downloaded takes quite a long time. The last couple that we'll look at here, these are ones that are very popular amongst clients who we've interacted with. Tape backups are a big one. They're all over the place. The problem is it's an extremely antiquated solution. What we see is that, again, tape backups have a heavy dependence on manual maintenance. You have to remember to go in every day, change the tape. You have to take tapes off-site. You have a constant cycle and rotation of these going since you don't want to use the same one all the time. But what we don't see is that clients don't tend to check on the health of the physical media. Tapes actually decay rather quickly over time from age, from heat or cold, from humidity, from static electricity, and so the quality of the media volume goes down. Also, there's an alarming rate of false positives and failures within this technology because, understandably, if the tape fails to pop out, we know something's wrong. The backup job might still be running. It may have run into errors. It could be jammed. So we know to look into it. But outside of that, if the tape bugged out, what does that mean? Does that mean that the job ran successfully? Does that mean that the job completed, but completed with errors? Tape backups tend to be something that aren't looked at too closely. And one of the questions we ask our clients is, when was the last time that you did a test restore from your tape backups? That tends to be a very long and very awkward pause, sometimes awkward, nervous laughter at the end of it, but they generally have to say, we don't keep a close eye on these, and that's concerning to us. USB drives are also a popular solution. Someone says, I'll come in, plug this thing in, make a copy of it, take it off-site. It's kind of a newer version of the tape backups generation. However, USB drives, frankly, have a higher failure rate than internal drives. They're not staying in a device, in a chassis, protected. They're not mounted well. They're typically in a business bag or a backpack or a purse or things of that sort coming on-site and off-site. And these don't tend to be encrypted as drives, which is a significant compliance violation, again, in many industries. And you risk loss or theft of that data. What happens if you have patient data? customer data, payment information, things of that sort. Your business is looking at a substantial set of government fines. So this also is not particularly viable. It involves manual labor again, and there's a lot of risk that comes with it. Another popular one that we've seen, not as much here in the Central Kentucky area, but that some of our clients have worked with, is the Barracuda Backup appliance. Now this is a little closer to the appliance-based end of the solution that we were going to talk about, but it's a proprietary system. With Barracuda Backups, you can restore a file or two, but you can't do granular restores, like you can't restore a component of a database or one mailbox out of an email exchange server, which is a significant problem for a lot of IT administrators. It's also not truly an off-site backup. It does go to the appliance and then go off-site, but the problem that our clients who've worked with this have seen is that if your appliance is offline locally, you cannot access the data in the cloud for whatever reason. You have to have both online working under valid licensing contract to be able to get in. There's also unlimited cloud storage, which is reported by these from Barracuda, and it's not actually unlimited. It's limited to the size of your appliance. So if your business outgrows your appliance, you're done sending data off-site. And frankly, the price point on this is very tough for small businesses because you have to have a hardware purchase, licensing, annual upkeep, and off-site copies. Or for businesses who have a large volume of data, because again, if your off-site replication is actually limited by the size of the appliance, you need a massive appliance for these, and the cost of that is pretty steep. So in terms of the discussion of is there a best backup, those are some of the popular ones that we see. What we've deemed to be the best type of backup for many of our clients is called image-based backups. And that's what our solution IntegraVault is based in. Now, why we perceive that these are the best, for a couple reasons. First of all, it's an easy snapshot. That's the manner in which the backup runs. This takes a picture of Windows itself, your operating system, all the applications, all of the user information, your folders, your files, everything. It's an exact duplicate of your active desktop, laptop, or server. It's easy for everyday issues because you can restore just one or two files, a real granular component of it, or you can restore the entire volume. Also, this gives you a true business continuity plan when it's purchased together with a BDR, Backup and Disaster Recovery, appliance. This has the fastest time to restore in the business of anything we've worked with. And the reason is because with an on-premise appliance that has image-based backups, you can in fact spin up your backups and run them as your server at your site while the actual physical servers are under maintenance and repair. This is something that no other backup solution we've worked with gives you the ability to do. And so in this scenario, instead of having an outage where you're down for days or weeks recovering productivity, you might only be down for a matter of hours, maybe even a matter of minutes while you spin up your backups. It's a much faster solution. This gives you a great disaster recovery scenario because, again, you have both the on-premise copy on your appliance for a faster restore speed, and you have an off-premise copy, giving you a total disaster recovery solution. There's no manual work involved. It's software that you install on your desktop, laptop, or server. You pre-schedule the job, and you let it run. With most of our clients, we schedule these for an overnight run while no one's in the office so that there's lots of time for this to execute. And in some of our clients who are heavier in the government, engineering, or medical end, we do small miniature backups in the middle of the day that can run without disrupting business in order to ensure that if there was ever an outage, the amount of data lost is extremely low. These have a high success rate because understandably this snapshot feature directly integrates with Windows, and so it's not something that's Java-based or that's an external applet that you have to keep an eye on. They run with a high success rate. There's high visibility because these link directly into Integrity IT's existing monitoring and ticketing systems. So if there is a backup job that fails at a client, it automatically opens up a ticket with our service desk team, and when we come in the next morning, it's sitting right there at the top of the queue, alerting us that someone needs to look into this. There's versioning history built in with this. By default, we keep a minimum of 30 days of file versioning history. You can keep more if you need to for your business, and there's not a limit on that. You just have to have enough space for it. Again, no data limit, as just mentioned. You can back up one or two endpoints. You can back up an entire virtual infrastructure, as many of our clients do, a whole group of servers going to the one appliance and then going off-site. And this comes with a flat monthly cost. Your license, your hardware, the cloud replication space for your off-site copy, the support from Integrity IT, all of that is included in one rate. And so a lot of CFOs are like that. It's not the variability of, well, how much will this potentially cost us in these scenarios? It's just one rate. So a lot of reasons to like this approach. So again, how it works, just for the visual learners in the room like myself, in our classic deployment model, your servers, desktops, or laptops can all have the IntegraVault software installed on that endpoint. At a pre-scheduled time, their backup jobs run, and they make a copy to that backup and disaster recovery appliance that you have on campus. This is what also then copies your data off-site to Integrity IT's disaster recovery cloud. So that way, if anything ever happens to one of your endpoints, you have it from the appliance. If anything happened to your building, we have it off-site. Now, having this appliance, as mentioned, gives you some extra recovery features. You can do an on-site restore from the appliance rather than having to do the slow download speeds that some solutions we saw face. And it gives you the on-site virtualization option. As mentioned, that if a server went down, we could spin up the backup on the appliance, redirect your network to point there, and we run that as your server so that your users get to go right on working. You can, instead of the appliance, use a network accessible storage device as a target of your image backups if you wanted to use that, but it takes away these two features, so we tend to strongly recommend the deployment of a BDR appliance. As mentioned, it's one thing to talk about concepts, it's one thing to talk about ideas, it's another thing for us to have done this successfully. This is a very small subset of our backup ticketing history, where you can see many of the restores that we've done for many of our clients. You can see that we do QuickBooks files restores. Someone has a business application that part of the data gets deleted. Someone realizes that, oh no, I got rid of that email that I was drafting that I actually really need to still have. Many different types. And the solutions run successfully. We have a long history of satisfied clients with this. And referrals are available if that's something that benefits your team to hear about those. So some success stories. Again, these are from the last 12 months here. We had a client whose data server had the main operating system drive, the C drive, get corrupted by software accidentally. So they contacted our team and said, hey, can we revert just this one drive on just this one endpoint to how it was 24 hours ago? And we were able to make that happen for them. We had a legal firm who had an employee depart, and after the employee departed, case kind of came back up, and they realized, hey, some of these case files are missing. Not sure if they accidentally got deleted or the person forgot to save them accurately. However it is, these are gone. And we were able to look back a couple weeks of version history and find the data in those backups, restore it for these people. We had another customer who was working within QuickBooks and accidentally overwrote some of the data that they needed. And so we were able to go back, restore an older version of their QuickBooks, kind of side by side with the existing one, so they could copy data across and get the correct information they needed. And as a practice simulation, Integrity IT, about a year and a half ago here, we had a public expo that we did, invited some of our clients to it, and we ran a simulation for them where we had a couple servers in the building connected to a BDR appliance, ImageBased Backups, and we quote-unquote simulated the failure of one of the servers, which really was we powered it off and unplugged it, so the server became inaccessible. What we were able to do is spin up that backup image on the BDR appliance in about 30 minutes while customers were there at the expo, and they were able to see us bring it back up and running on the BDR appliance. They knew there were no games involved because they were holding the power and internet cord of the other server in their hand, so it clearly wasn't there. So it's a proven, tested solution. And I know we just talked through a lot here. If you have any questions about this, we wanted to give you a chance to be able to ask the experts. Our account managers, Marcus and I, are on the call, and we also have Nick Connis, who's our engineering lead for all of our backup and disaster recovery solutions. Would love to be able to field some questions from you. Obviously, if you have customer-specific questions, anytime that we get to come on site and talk with you about the solution, we'll be more than glad to dig into those. But we'd love to field some questions now. So if you've got ideas, feel free to type those questions into chat for a moment here, and we'll see if we can answer a couple questions. Marcus, if you can unmute Nick, that would be fantastic. And Nick, if you've got any comments to give as people are asking questions or any particular pieces of the solution that you like, would love to hear from you. All right, brief
Hi,
pause just in
everybody.
case we've got.
We're
Hey
looking through
Nick, how
some
are
of
you
these
doing?
questions here. The first one I see is, are there any space limitations with the solution that I have currently? The technical answer to that is no. There's no space limitation on how much you can take up. Some of the other guys here might be able to comment on our pricing structure, but normally you would prepay for a certain amount of space, and you know, if you were to exceed that, you know, we normally don't say anything until you are sort of chronically exceeding the space you've been paying for. With regard to image-based backups, it kind of works the same way. We carve out enough space that you would need initially and to grow, and basically at that point, if you exceed it, you know, we'd probably need to speak with you about increasing the allotted space. But you know, the short answer is no. There's no technical limitation to the amount of space you can take up.
Sure. And Nick, tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe in the bundled model that we have, every server that we back up comes with.
Okay, another question here. Can you restore an Active Directory outage so users can log in again to their workstation as a virtual image? Yeah, depending on what exactly you mean by that question, we have one of the backup solutions we uses a thing called granular recovery, and what that means is what the word granular refers to is you can recover exactly one user or one group or one small piece of Active Directory, or obviously, like David was saying, you can recover the entire Active Directory server. But in either of those cases, yes, if you lose the ability to log in because your user has been deleted or your server is down, we can recover both of those things in their own special way and get you back up and working.
That's great.
Looking through the list here, would we be able to do our own restores? We traditionally don't do that. There's no reason why there's no technical reason why you can't. The only reason really is because you know, we've probably had a lot more training in using the software, but there's really no reason why we wouldn't let you do your own file restores. We'd always be happy to show you kind of how it works and how to do your own file restores. So I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be a possibility. There's someone that says, do you assume the difference between what I have currently and the solution is an on-site appliance? In your case, yes. Some of our smaller clients or anybody that maybe has a home office or just has a simple PC or laptop that they back up, admittedly, we would not necessarily recommend an on-site appliance unless you see the need, unless your recovery needs dictate that. But yeah, most PC, laptop backups, that kind of thing, we would recommend maybe a NAS on site or some other storage device on site that doesn't exactly have a brain to it, so to speak. It's not a server, but it's really just some space that keeps your backups in another location other than your laptop or your computer.
That's great.
What process do you now have for a disaster? What we do right now, a disaster recovery plan is really customized and individual for every client. Basically, though, here's what we have the capability of doing. Assuming you have a backup disaster recovery device, you've got basically a copy of all your servers on that device, and that device is capable of turning your servers on in a virtualized environment. So if you have a disaster or some other sort of catastrophe where your servers are rendered unusable, we can really get your network back up in some capacity, if not full capacity, with just that backup device. It will actually, all of your servers will be running virtually on it. That is, you know, something that we're capable of doing. If there is something bigger, if there's a bigger catastrophe or the building is unused, if you all need to go home and work from home, your whole staff, we have the ability to take your offsite backups and spin them up as virtual machines in the cloud. This is something we would really need to make a plan. We've made a plan for a few of our clients on how to do this, and we can specify down to a pretty accurate level how long this would take. It's not something that's done immediately, but it would take, I would say hours. But we can get your network back up in the cloud and allow you to access everything you could access in your office from your home or from a Starbucks or from really wherever you want to work. But like I said, it's what we're talking about here is a small part of a much bigger disaster recovery plan that you would need.
That's great.
Would restore require an on-site visit? No, not necessarily. In most cases, no. The only time we would really need to come on site would be to if you all had, like I said, a major catastrophe. But really, in most cases, we can do a file restore, a database restore, a whole server, a whole volume, anything like that. We can do all that remotely, just as easily as we could on site. Again, yeah, no need to really come on site unless there's always extenuating circumstances that could dictate that. But no, for the most part, all of this stuff, like almost all of our services, can be done remotely.
These are great questions. Keep them coming. All right, are we seeing anything else coming in for Mr. Nick?
If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and send them in, but I'll stand by for more, or David, feel free to take it from here.
Sure. Well, I'll keep going from here. If we have any more questions come in, feel free to interject with those. Feel free to keep posting them in chat for us. But I believe our next thing is Mark Simpson, our partner in crime in account management here with me, is going to handle the giveaways. We have two giveaways that we're announcing. One of them, understandably, is to one of our attendees today, and one of them is going to be for an attendee who signs up for our IntegraVault backup services between now and the end of April. So there will be a whole second drawing for that one. And Marcus, I think, has more information on that, so I'll defer to him. All right, Marcus, are you there with us? All right, give us just one moment here, ladies and gentlemen. We'll getting some names in the hat here. Miss Joanne is pulling those together for us here while we work on getting Marcus's microphone working. We'll do a random drawing.
Hey, David. You did a great job. Sorry for the delay. Did a great job on the webinar. Thanks to all the attendees that joined the webinar, learned a little bit more about backups and disaster recovery, which is a really critical part of IT. And now it's time for the drawing. Thanks to all the attendees for joining us. And this is the drawing for the Amazon.com gift card. And looks like I have drawn the name of Sam Thompson. So Sam Thompson, congratulations. We have your email address. We'll go ahead and notify you, send you an email, give you a phone call, and you'll have the Amazon.com gift card sent to you this week. We also are going to have another giveaway. It's going to be the Amazon's Fire tablet. We're going to give that away to the first company that signs up to an IntegraVault backup service. But once again, we appreciate you attending our second webinar in our webinar series for backups and disaster recovery.
All right. Marcus, Nick, Joanne, Brian, thanks for being on the call with me. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. If you've got any questions, we'd love for you to schedule a free backup audit with your account manager. and we'll work with you to assess where your backups stand currently and how we can serve you in that way. Thank you for joining us on the call.